Welcome to ShiftWatch. I'm your host, Starbuck. In this episode, this week's news starts with a report on the energetic changes I experienced over a 4-day period that with certainty I can attest my physical comfort lined up perfectly with the geomagnetic storms we suffered. I had a similar multi-day event similar to this while I was in the Sedona area last season. Like others who I've been communicating with the last several months, the energetic physical effects on the human body caused by solar influences like coronal hole streams and coronal mass ejections have been undeniable. In my case, starting last Wednesday, April 30th, I began to experience energy surges going through me that aligned once again with this activity. Over the next 4 days, energetic surges will pass through me during the course of the day. My appetite will wane. My throat chakra seemed blocked. And I spent most of each day meditating the day away while my physicality was morphing to new conditions. It seemed the proper time to share with the tribe, as this is the second instance of a multiple day duration event. And apparently, I'm not alone. So that you can track this activity for yourself, and because space weather has effects on all sentient life, including humans, I've included these sites that serve space weather monitoring that help me stay current on solar storm potential. Next, drawing a line connecting the recent power grid losses in Spain, Portugal, and Puerto Rico, and the solar storm activity. Tim Poole invited Ben Davidson from Space Weather News to discuss what happened energetically between Earth and the Sun during those events. Then, watching UFO events over Turkey. This is original video over a several-day period with multiple sightings. With all the fake sightings promoted through the use of CGI these days, this footage we know to be legit as it was captured using videotape, which in its original form cannot be altered. And finally, 5D ascension information with meaningful reminders of what energetic changes are happening with the Earth and every sentient life form on the planet right now. We are undergoing a part of that cosmic metamorphosis. A few years ago, when the idea that Earth was going through a cosmic shift in her evolution, I wanted to understand more about what that meant. Many sources pointed toward a solar flash or a phenomenon that would push her into her next level of consciousness, and that whole notion resonated with me. It wasn't like Earth hadn't been through pole shifts in the past, and it appears that we are overdue for the next occurrence with conditions that seem to be ideal. I began seeking out websites leveraging the technology we have available to us that would track, report, and to the degree possible, forecast upcoming events. I'll share these sites so that you can begin to educate yourselves on what all this solar influence has on planet Earth. This first site is NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center, and there is an abundance of mostly real-time conditions laid out in an easy-to-comprehend fashion. The first thing my attention is drawn to are the overall space weather conditions showing R, radio blackout impacts, S, solar radiation impacts, and G, geomagnetic storm impacts. As you can see, at the time of this recording, we are and have been in some sustained G1 storms. You can get more information on the nature of those conditions by clicking on the G1 icon for more detail. Below that, you will see in the space weather overview the current solar X-ray flux, solar proton flux, and geomagnetic activity scales. Do yourself some good and learn what these potential threat each one represents. These conditions aren't affecting just the Earth. They have an impact on all sentient life. So, dear human, you are not immune to these effects, as evidenced by what I recently experienced by these energetic waves since April 30th. The scale next to it has the Space Weather Prediction Center's forecasted geostorm conditions over the next several days. Then you'll see a series of imagers from various government satellites tracking the sun's activity. These are real-time videos of the solar activity at different angstrom levels to show the coronal hole and flaring activity on the sun's surface. These solar wind charts show the characteristics of the solar stream shooting from the open coronal holes. It is an unpredictable source of influence, the coronal hole, in that recently historically low brushes with solar wind streams have resulted in higher levels of storm conditions that are sustaining long duration events over days at a time. The Enlil production shows illustrations of the potential impact of that activity in terms of plasma density on the top and plasma speed on the bottom. When conditions are right, you will also see the forecasted aurora probabilities on this animation map, as well as the 3-day report of proton and electron flux headed Earth's way. When the atmosphere is excited, we can expect the total electron count to fluctuate, and the X-ray flux absorption prediction shows the extent of what is hitting Earth's surface on the sun-facing side. And finally, the solar cycle sunspot number and radial flux progression, which also implies we are trending higher than normal. SolarHam is another comprehensive site with many of the data sources from NOAA, but I find it much more detailed, with some stories of current conditions. Rather than go through all the details, I'll leave it up to you to explore this site and all the data it has to interpret. When storms do strike, they are often reported in KP levels of geomagnetic storms. Where the other sites show these events in 3-hour blocks, GFZ shows them in 30-minute increments, so you can appreciate especially long duration events. They also have a 10-day view that I find particularly interesting, especially after this week's spike that began April 30th. I also track the latest earthquakes, as I've come to understand that all the seismic activity is triggered by the energy Earth sustains during solar activity aimed at our planet. I learned much about tectonic plates and all the activity that makes sense around them. What doesn't make all that much sense to me these days is seeing reports of earthquakes in unlikely places such as Kentucky, Missouri, and Maine. We can hardly account for all the seismic activity without watching the volcanic eruptions happening at various locations across the planet as well. At one point last week, it was reported that there are 75 active volcanoes spewing across Earth. And one more, this time an Australian space weather site that has a different but effective way of illustrating the physical impact the planet is taking during these storms. You can see where the satellites orbit the sun, as well as where solar wind speed and proton density rise and fall. How much more can Earth's deteriorating magnetic field take before the collapse finally happens and the imminent pole shift takes place?
The day before this power outage, The Guardian wrote an op-ed saying solar storms could lead to nuclear disasters. Then we get a day later this massive power outage in Europe that they're saying is due to an atmospheric phenomenon. I'm wondering if you want to break down for us what you think happened here, and then we'll figure out where to go from there.
Absolutely. Well, the official explanation that they're giving is about 80% correct. Their official explanation is that extreme temperatures caused an atmospheric oscillation, which resulted in a desyncing and induction event into the high voltage lines. Things weren't matching up, and basically the entire system had a cascading failure.
Okay, but real
Now,
quick,
most of that is correct. Sorry,
how
go ahead.
so wait. All of this sounds like very technical jargon to us. Like, what's the layman's terms? Like, the temperature caused the electricity, vibrations. What is this?
Essentially, there is some pretty high level physics involved with the atmospheric oscillation thing, but essentially what they're saying is extreme temperatures caused this electric surge to go through and shock the system and basically break it. That would be the simplest version. Now, that is what happened in terms of the breakage, but there was no extreme heat. It would take such extreme heat to do that you don't find that anywhere on Earth. Not to mention the fact that temperatures in the area yesterday were about a half a degree above normal, and normal for the end of April in the Iberian Peninsula of Europe is just not that hot.
I think it was reported at like 70 degrees.
It was not too hot. It was complete nonsense. Now, there are two things that are really interesting. One, they were noticing a surge in the solar power output. Basically, the solar panels, for some reason that they can't understand or explain, surged power through the system. Now, while this was happening, I was taking a look at the data about the ionosphere, which is the electric layer up at the top of the atmosphere. It got hit. It took a major hit. And then you could see this energy coming down through the atmosphere through what we call the global atmospheric electric circuit, where not only can you see it vertically moving up and down, but you can use the ground level winds to see where it's going to go. It follows the water vapor in the atmosphere, in the wind. Water, electricity, they kind of like each other. And so you could see it coming down, and then that electricity surge go right into Portugal, Spain, and France at the exact same time.
Wow.
As the blackout. Now, here's the interesting thing. They have a pretty good idea about what that was, but the fact that they also saw the solar panels inexplicably surge their output at the exact same time is the definitive clue. I don't know if you ever watched the movie The Core about Earth's magnetic field failing. So they go full Hollywood sci-fi idiot realm about 25 minutes in. But the opening scenes, those are accurate. A weak spot in Earth's magnetic field, it's not all of a sudden the whole globe collapses. It starts with a weak spot here or a weak spot here. And then there's a plasma breakthrough, which also allows extra ultraviolet to break through due to a temporary depression of the ozone in that layer. And so at the same time as this plasma breaking through, and I watched it do that, I watched it come down through the atmosphere, they were also noticing an ultraviolet surge in the solar panel production. So that's both things you expect. The particles, the plasma coming in, the electrically charged material, and the light, the ultraviolet light coming through the same hole. It was that exact same thing from the movie, although the movie, the movie made it seem like it was extreme enough to burn people's skin. Welcome to Hollywood. Essentially what we have is, I've been on your shows twice already talking about the fact that we're in a magnetic pole shift, that things are getting a little scary and they're accelerating faster and faster. This was one of the things I really started to expect to see in the 2030s. We're a little early on that. And I had to admit to my viewers, I can't really account for how quickly these things have been happening since about March of 2023. Our timeline was pretty solid with what we were expecting, but in about the last 2 years and change, things have just been going way too quickly. The Earth is taking way too big a hits from basically anything the sun throws at us. And then 2 days ago, the sun didn't even throw anything at us. This was just a hole in Earth's magnetic field, a weak spot. The plasma broke through, the ultraviolet broke through the depressed ozone at that time. And, I don't know whether it was the extra ultraviolet surging through the solar panels, or more likely in my head, the plasma actually coming down and integrating directly into the system, which is the electric shock that some of the experts are talking about that hit the one system and basically caused a violent fluctuation that collapsed the system over those three countries. Or it's both of them combined. So either one of them could do it, but their cause is really the story here, why it happened.
Is there any possibility? I don't know what the official explanation Puerto Rico's given for their power outage last week. Is there any relation to that?
So that happened less than 60 seconds after the solar storm began that day. That one was solar driven.
Really?
And it was very clear. The solar storm began and Puerto Rico went black. It was literally boom, boom, 1-2 punch. As fast as when you punch someone, how fast they hit the ground. That's how fast it was.
Last night, we saw the coronal hole stream arrive. It is a minor stream, only peaking around 600 to 650 kilometers per second, but it is driving a minor geomagnetic storm here this morning after the quiet conditions yesterday. But those quiet conditions yesterday present another issue, because in the southern hemisphere, you'd have had a tough time telling anyone the sun was quiet. Aurora exploded across Tasmania, New Zealand, and Australia, where there was no explanation for it at all, just like with the plasma breakthrough in the north earlier this week, minutes before the Iberian Peninsula blackout. This is screaming that it's the same kind of event. No solar trigger, no equinox vulnerability. We're a month past that, and this may be another instance of the field weakening so badly that literally nothing causes auroral events via plasma breakthrough.
Yalçın Yalman grew up in Turkey, where he still lives today. He experienced an ordinary childhood, but at the age of 12, he had a significant encounter with 3 mysterious objects in the sky while fishing with his father. This event left a strong impression on him, creating a distinct feeling in both his body and mind that has remained with him ever since. After his childhood, he completed the mandatory 2 years of service in the Turkish military, which is required for all citizens. He dedicated several years of his life to living with and caring for his ailing mother. Those who know Yalçın describe him as a friendly and humble man. In 2007, Yalçın moved into his father's apartment in Kumburgaz, located 25 miles west of Istanbul. His father, a retired colonel, owned a building by the Marmara Sea that he rented out to tourists and beach visitors. Yalçın spent a lot of time there during the summer, from May to August, taking care of the property and often staying overnight. Soon, significant events occurred that altered his life forever. At first, he noticed something strange above the water late at night when everyone else was asleep. It looked odd, too low to be a plane or a star, and it moved in a strange way. He decided to buy a camcorder to gather more evidence in case it returned. This footage was recorded using a Canon GL1 Mini DV camcorder, a crucial detail as Mini DV technology captures authentic visuals directly onto physical tape within a cassette. This method ensures that the images are not subject to manipulation through CGI. Starting on June 20th, 2007, at 3:37 a.m., Yalçın took his first video of this object hovering over the water. On June 22nd, just 2 days later, a friend met him at the beach right in front of the building where he worked when this video was recorded. The object hovered still in the sky above the water, appearing to challenge the rules of gravity and physics. On July 30th, 2007, it marked the third out of 24 different dates that various objects were spotted and recorded. I had the chance to interview Yalcin back in 2013 using an interpreter to help us communicate. During our conversation, he shared the details of this incident that happened on July 30th, 2007. He was relaxing in his father's apartment when he started to hear ringing in his ears that he describes as a mechanical sound. It was a feeling he recognized from his first sighting of 3 UFOs at 12 years old. He took his camera and stepped outside. There he saw an unidentified object hovering silently above the neighboring village at approximately 4:50 a.m. The video captures the voices of other residents who also noticed its presence. Just 14 minutes later, it starts to move across the sky to the right, ultimately disappearing behind a chimney and vanishing from view. Yalcin kept a close eye from his spot by the sea, with repeated sightings occurring on August 1st. August 2nd, August 7th, August 10th, August 12th, and August 24th. In 2008, he went back to the same place to manage his father's tourist property by the Marmara coast during the summer. He closely observed the skies over the ocean after last year's events. It did not take long for them to reappear. It might be difficult to accept, and it's perfectly reasonable to be skeptical. However, all the facts suggest that it really took place. On May 23, 2008 at 4:53 a.m., he notices his first object beneath a bright moon. Upon closer inspection, it appears to be moving slowly to the left. It's difficult to determine whether it's a glowing object or a physical craft reflecting the moonlight. 4 days had passed, and on May 27, 2008, at 2:31 in the morning, the sky was clear and the moon was bright. While most people were sleeping, Yalcin and 2 friends chose to stay awake, wondering if the objects would return again. Initially, a small, shimmering object was detected in the distance, suspended motionlessly in the sky over the ocean. They zoomed in the camera to get a closer look, revealing more detail. Another sighting took place 2 days later on May 29th. This segment from June 6th is facing a different direction and shows a view from the side. The next images are individual frames captured from the segment on June 8th. There are many questions that could be raised at this stage, such as, Who is piloting them? Why do they keep coming back at this location? And are they purposely trying to be seen for some unknown reason?
When we talk about 5D, or the fifth dimension, we are not referring to a physical place you can travel to in the traditional sense. Instead, we are talking about a state of being, a vibration, a level of awareness that operates on an entirely different frequency from the reality most people are used to. In the third dimension, or 3D, life is centered around survival, competition, ego, separation, and linear time. People identify heavily with their physical bodies, their status, their achievements, and their material possessions. Everything is seen as solid, tangible, and limited. Time is viewed as a straight line from past to future, and the dominant emotions are often fear, anger, jealousy, and control. The fourth dimension, or 4D, is a transitional space. It is the bridge between the dense 3D world and the expansive 5D reality. In 4D, people start to awaken. They begin to question old systems. They seek healing. They explore spirituality. They feel the pull towards something more meaningful. Emotions can still be intense in 4D, but there is also a growing awareness that thoughts and feelings create reality. People in 4D are learning to master their inner world and to see beyond the illusions of fear and division. Then there is the fifth dimension, the 5D, where consciousness is fully anchored in love, in unity, and in the realization that everything and everyone is interconnected. In 5D, there is no separation, no judgment, no scarcity. The dominant emotions are unconditional love, peace, gratitude, and joy. Time becomes fluid, more like an ocean than a straight line. You begin to experience synchronicities, instant manifestations, and a deep sense of trust in the flow of life. Living in 5D means you no longer react from fear. You respond from love. You no longer see others as separate from yourself. You recognize the divine essence in all beings. You do not need to control outcomes because you understand that everything unfolds according to a higher wisdom. You trust your intuition more than external noise. You create from a place of inspiration rather than desperation. This ascension is not about leaving your body behind or escaping your life. It is about bringing the light of your highest self into your human experience. It is about embodying your soul's truth in every action, every thought, and every interaction. It is about living as the bridge between heaven and earth, between spirit and matter. More and more people are feeling the call to ascend into 5D consciousness. And even though the process can be intense, even though it requires letting go of old patterns, the rewards are beyond anything the third-dimensional mind can imagine. The world seen through the eyes of 5D is vibrant, alive, magical, and full of infinite possibilities. And every step you take toward it brings you closer to the life your soul has always known was possible. The idea of the 5D ascension is not something new. It is not a modern invention created by a few spiritual teachers in recent years. In fact, the roots of this knowledge go back thousands of years, scattered throughout ancient prophecies, sacred texts, and indigenous wisdom from all around the world. Many ancient cultures knew that humanity would one day face a great shift, a transition into a higher state of consciousness. And they left behind clues to guide us through this powerful transformation.